defa onları yerle bir etmek için buradayım.
Her şey bitti. Çok geç kaldı bu savaşa. Beni orada The mythical beast fall. Wildcats roar.
Alles stand in Flammen. Aber jetzt ist die Zeit für Rache. Na potrzebna z tej drodze wiele trudności, jednak tym razem nic mnie nie powstrzyma. ¿Qué le demostrar al resto? Que es un punto brillante.
On vous a manqué. Il est temps de reprendre ce qui nous appartient.
Welcome one and all to the EMEA Masters 2023 Summer. I am Just Oshin. I am joined by the delightful Dagda in his fantastic candy striped shirt. We're going for a little bit of a theme today. It's different things. How are you doing, man? You're coming off of a pretty busy weekend on the LEC.
Yeah, feeling peachy, just like my shirt. Like, delighted to be here. It's going to be good. EMEA Masters, I'm actually genuinely really excited to see how these teams are going to face off, especially since we're starting off with DenizBank Wildcats. Like, these guys took over last year. It was neck and neck between them and UOL Sexy Edition, but I'm excited now to see them come back and see what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, look, we got the exact same roster, if you didn't know, for the Wildcats. They are TCL champions again. They're coming in to try and maintain their title and maybe become the second back-to-back champions of the EMEA Masters title. We'll have to wait and see. There is a smallish French org in there somewhere that might have something to say about it. But, I mean, like, some of the players that are coming back here, like, you know, some of them don't even need an introduction because, as I just said, it's the exact same roster that just won the last tournament.
Yeah, well, it's going to be Ferret being added in as well now. So Ferret coming into the jungle is, I think, the big addition for these guys. And I think that's the one that I'm really excited about seeing come through. This is a guy that we've seen at internationals. Like, he's been to Worlds and he's been an incredibly strong early game jungler for this team as well. And been able to step up massively to then facilitate people like Bao and Paris, which was the shining light for this roster that we saw back in spring. Like, I am very excited to see how this AD carry and support can once again look to take over in that aggressive style.
Yeah, honestly, it's going to be, again, just kind of them looking to stamp their authority. We'll see if they can have that kind of same level of dominance that they did right up until the final. I believe it was a 5-game series, if my memory serves me right. So let's see if they can kind of continue that momentum. And of course, you know, kind of thinking about some of the other teams coming into this as well. We've got ourselves Anonymo coming in onto this one as well. And the group are covering because they went from second seed to first seed in the Ultra League and kind of a big upset that Zero Tenacity aren't here.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to be keeping their eyes on them, especially, it felt like they kind of got done dirty, I'll say, coming into the last split where we saw them end up in a group with LDLC and UOL Sexy Edition, the group of death. It felt like they weren't really given a running start, but now coming into this group up against like Bisons and GTC Esports as well, it feels like they have much more of wiggle room to try and get themselves up and out of the group stage.
And look, you can see all the groups there. I'm 100% biased. I'm looking at Group C. I'm looking at Natives. Go on, the boys! Get yourselves in there. A bit of an Irish red, green, white, and orange there for us to kind of, you know, bring our little bit of pride. We will not be covering Group C, of course. That will be over on our second stream. That is over on twitch.tv/ESLOL, excuse me. And we are going to be covering all of the games today from Group A. So we're going to be keeping ourselves locked in, laser focused on, honestly, kind of a bit of a toss-up here, because as much as I think Istanbul, DenizBank Istanbul Wildcats are the favourites, it's kind of, the water gets a bit muddied after that.
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, the fact that we're kind of looking to see just how these teams are going to end up focusing on their strengths coming into this and trying to play towards something that can try and help them out and try and find their footing, I think is going to be the big one. So yeah, I was looking at a stat and did not pay attention to what you said.
It's all good. You just went into your own world of stats, the numbers. What do they mean, Dagda? What do the numbers mean? But honestly, yeah, look, we're going to be keeping our eyes on this. But of course, if you do want to keep up with Group C, do check out twitch.tv/ESLOL. Excuse me. It's always kind of a weird mouthful of letters, excuse me. But coming into our first game, it is going to be the DenizBank Wildcats versus Anonymo. And again, we're kind of on an unsure kind of setup right now because in the Ultra League of Zero Tenacity, just kind of imploded, didn't really get to do what they wanted to do, expected to be the #1 seed from the Ultra League. And now we kind of see what Orbit Anonymo can do up against, kind of, again, the favorites for the tournament, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a big step up for them, because a lot of when I look at Orbit Anonymo, it's a case of trying to play for team fights, like trying to get Roizen and Nerman into a position where they're going to be able to step up and be the carries. But you are going up against DenizBank Istanbul Wildcats, who are one of the big favorites coming into this, alongside teams like SK Prime, obviously, who are able to take first place over in the German league, or the DOC league. So I think this is where I'm really looking to see how can they find themselves in this. Can they, after stepping up in the Ultra Liga, now step up as well in the EMEA Masters?
Yeah, that's the big question though, because you can't just kind of come in lukewarm now. You have to put your best foot forward because of just how condensed the schedule is right now, and you got to come out swinging, because the Wildcats are here to play. They're here to win, and in a lot of people's eyes, they are going to be the kind of the big ticket team to try and take down. So we've already kind of talked about how majority of the roster kind of coming in, Ferret being added as well into that jungle. It is going to come down to kind of how you're able to kind of deal with this powerhouse that now finds themselves in the EMEA Masters tournament.
But it's not only the fact that they're a powerhouse, at the EMEA Masters tournament in spring, they've been a powerhouse domestically as well. Like 13-1 in their standings. MVP for Ferret coming into this. I mean, when you look at basically every stat across the board, they're first pretty much everywhere. Like, especially looking at Bao and Paris as well on that bot side, like over 1,100 goal difference at 15 on average in the regular split for Bao. That is an absurd number. That is like what we see some teams have, if they're lucky, coming into that goal difference of 15. So the fact that you got this powerhouse bot lane who's now adding in Ferret, who obviously we've seen at Worlds in the past is known for being a hyper aggressive jungler. It has worked out so incredibly well for them, where they're able to lend those resources down to the bottom lane, play heavily for the Dragons. I think that's where we're going to have to see how the bot lane of the Ultra Liga team is going to be able to step up, if they can go toe to toe with who are the powerhouses of Bao and Paris. Like, Bao was talked about for a lot of teams about potentially being picked up for the LEC after his spring performance, and we'll have to see now if he can continue that streak.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the stepping stone, the pedestal to put yourself onto to get into those bigger leagues, to get into the LEC, and then potentially look towards getting back towards World. Of course, the Wildcats no stranger to that particular one. Might be a little while before we see them there again, but coming into this one as well, we're going on to 13. Well, I'm going on to 13, 15. It's been a double patch jump for myself. But again, we're kind of seeing how these teams kind of adapt to these small little changes. Nothing massive, nothing sweeping, but there's definitely some nerfs here and there that are definitely going to kind of make these drafts a little bit more kind of interesting for me anyway.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't been keeping up, the big ones are going to be like Static Shiv LeBlanc not really being as strong anymore, because Night Harvester can't proc the Static Shiv. You look towards things as well like the Sejuani being taken out of the jungle pool. Maokai took a little hit. Ivern technically got nerfed, but honestly, I think he got a buff in the early stages, which is really helping him out. So I definitely think we'll still see things like the Ivern, the two trees essentially still being a big factor in this one when it comes to jungle. And then you're still looking at things like Kaisa, Zai, Varus, like down in the bottom side of the map. So the only other kind of big sneak peek I'll say is something like the Aatrox in that top lane. But I'll be curious to see what we do get going on, because I think certainly looking at people like Destroy, I think he's going to be more likely to try and bring out something like an Aatrox in that top side. Whereas I think we'll see a lot of our top laners across the course of the day probably default back towards something like an Ornn or a Sion or these kind of things, and play for that strong front to back team fight.
Yeah, I think that's the best way we've kind of seen pretty much all regions looking for it. The team fight setup, you kind of want to either get those first few towers down with the Rift Heralds, kind of snowball from there, or get those dragons stacking and see if you can start making the works there. It's kind of become the meta everywhere all year. Let's be honest, it's just kind of how it is right now. The way the objectives are kind of going for it is very little reward and risking it all so early, especially if it goes wrong. So we are seeing a lot of teams kind of just, if they don't feel comfortable for a particular fight, they just back away, wait for someone else to come back.
I 100% agree. I think, though, for these teams, at least from like watching their playstyles, it definitely feels like Dragon is much more of a focus for them. I think like the only team that I'm kind of looking at is like GTZ Esports, who are like, yeah, we sometimes go for objectives, but are much more focused on like plates and want to play for, hey, we beat you in lane and take that gold. Every other team, like the three teams that teams that we see in Group A, are very much a case of, look, we want to try and play for bot lane. We want to get our leads there and turn that into big dragon fights and trying to snowball our leads for there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a huge amount of aggression in these early stages down towards that bottom side of the map.
Yeah, again, we already put such a highlight onto the bot side to see kind of where these things going. And naturally, if you have such a highlight on your own bot lane, dragons are just kind of the natural thing to come back out from it. So, but again, we do have a little bit of a delay before we get into our first game, so we can kind of talk holistically about the tournament. And obviously, this is only kind of the second term, really, the second split. We've had the likes of the TCL kind of added into the system, and they are kind of coming in and starting the way they wanted to continue on. It does feel like this is a team that, and there's a region as a whole that is very much coming in, taking this seriously and saying, look, LFL, Superliga, even the Prime League, you guys got another contender here. We are coming here to win championships.
Yeah, and I think that's the big one. The TCL has kind of come in as the big bad for a lot of the EMEA Masters teams who are just like, all right, this is the new guy to beat. And I think bringing in the fact that you've got so many players that have actually gone on to like big international tournaments such as Worlds and MSI, and then having that experience to be able to bring now to EMEA Masters is super interesting. And I think if I'm the likes of SK Prime that are playing with like Febby, Kadui, Genax, like a bunch of super strong players that are trying to now go up against them, it feels like you've got to put together nearly super teams in the hopes that you want to try and take this TCL team down. And as he said, like they have been incredible domestically. So I think a lot of the teams are going to be focusing on them to try and figure out how they can try and take it to them. And even like I was listening to an interview with Dom Sacco earlier on with, again, No Name, who's on esports, our Bison's E-Club, sorry.
Yes.
I was talking about like they've scrimped against them and they are even in their eyes the team to beat. No Name was saying that was a huge amount of their focus was going to be on how can we try and take down these guys. So I definitely agree with you. I think the TCL are definitely the region at the moment, but I think the DOC region is going to be no pushovers. These are the other big ones. And then obviously LFL is always in the conversation too. So I think there is a lot of strong teams that are going to be looking to see if they can take down DenizBank Istanbul Wildcats.
And I think it's kind of a testament to the whole tournament, and it's from its entire inception back in 2018 all the way to now, 5 years later. It has gotten better and it has produced fantastic talent. We've seen multiple examples of people coming up from the ERLs, showing their name off in the EMEA Masters tournament, and then getting onto LEC. Obviously Dream being the most recent one in my mind that kind of came up to the LEC in summer. So this is a great opportunity for all these teams, and it shows you just how competitive it is and how passionate the fans are. Sometimes I feel like the LFL can nearly eclipse the LEC in terms of viewership and how passionate they are. So, I mean, this is going to come down to kind of, who wants it more, to be honest with you, because it did feel like for quite a few years in the tournament that it was kind of two regions. It used to be the Superliga, and then the LFL had their dominant reign, and now we're kind of getting, again, like you mentioned, all these different regions kind of giving us these big teams that are very much looking to try and, take the title, become the Masters of Europe, if you will.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think the fact that we've added now the TCL, it makes it incredibly strong because they're kind of, you're forced to then go toe-to-toe with these guys who are playing on the world stage. You then look at teams like, as we say, like SK Prime, who are playing with Genax, who are playing with Febby, when they're playing with, they've all got these guys that are like ex-LEC talent. So immediately you already have to step the game up. So it definitely feels like a huge amount of EMEA Masters has now become a case of, well, you've nearly got to be able to rival the LEC teams if you want to try and be able to compete here, because that's just the level that they're at. And even as you mentioned, like LEC teams have been scrimming LFL teams for donkey's years at this stage. Like there is a huge amount of it. And even just on your point of some of the diehard LFL fans, I actually went out for a night out and like met a guy who doesn't watch any other region apart from LFL, knew everything about League of Legends, but only watched LFL. And I was like, this is the diehard representation that you do get from the LFL. But I think you get to see it more and more. Like we know there's diehard Turkish fans. We know that there's going to be a lot more of like the DOC region fans that are going to be stepping up, especially as their region is doing so well at the moment.
I like the idea of him like not having a clue about any of the ecosystems, going, why are we not at the World Championships? This is so weird. What is going on? Carmine Corp won. What the hell? But I always love the idea of those kind of like little interactions and stuff, and of course creating new fans, new communities, and just new kind of setups, and hopefully more and more competition as we kind of continue on. And I do have a slight update. There is still a bit of a delay, so we are hopefully going to be jumping into picks and bans as soon as we possibly can. We do apologize for that, of course, but we want to make sure that the teams and the players are all 100% set up, ready to go. And I'm going to put you on the spot here, Dagda. You've come off of a weekend of LEC, and I'm going to put you straight out into the fire. Where are you looking? Who's going to win? Who's taking the entire title right now? I'll give my answer as well, but I want you to give yours first. All
right. Well, there are two that really stand out in my mind, right? And it's going to be the Istanbul Wildcats, the DenizBank Istanbul Wildcats, and also then looking at SK Prime, right? Because when you look at how strong domestically both these teams were, it's kind of hard not to look at them and say, hey, look, these guys look absolutely fantastic. And even when you look back at spring, both these regions were the two regions that we got in the finals, with UO Sexy Edition being the ones that were representing the DOC region in that one. But even when you look at, like, I had a look at a few of the stats for the DenizBank Istanbul Wildcats, and it's like, when you look at like first blood percents, it's like, usually you think it's like, oh yeah, the junglers tend to have like super high first bloods. I was like, Ferret, who won MVP, just to mention, of the TCL split, has a 35% first blood rate.
Not bad.
Then I was like, wait a second, why does Bao, the AD carry, have a 57% first blood rate? It's like, that's pretty absurd. And then I looked at the number one, and Paris has a 71% first blood rate in his games. That is obscene. In 70% of the games that this man enters, he's involved in first blood, but it's just absolutely insane. But I think even when you look at like both the solo laners for Istanbul Wildcats have like the highest solo lanes in the league, highest solo kills in the league at 6 apiece. Like, this team looks so incredibly strong. They look nuts. And I think it will be coming back to like the SK Prime kind of lending itself and leaning on, as you talked about, the experience, the ex-LEC experience that you see in that roster. And even like having guys like Febby, who've been so strong for so long, trying to lend himself to that, I think is going to be, can they now, after winning the DOC, after going like, I think it was 3-1 and 3-1 in semi-finals and then in finals, and might have even been 3-0, I can't remember off the top of my head, but this team looks insane, coming from a DOC region that looked very strong in spring and beat UOL Sexy Edition to be here. So I think that's where a lot of my focus is going to be, is coming back to, are we going to have these two big regions face up against each other once more?
Yeah, it's interesting as well. I love how you bring up kind of, obviously the TCL, naturally, reigning champions, totally fair to kind of bring them up. The DOC region is there as well. And again, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Carmine Corp kind of coming in and showing again that they are here to just kind of dominate if they can. They had a fantastic LFL split. They really looked like they kind of went back to what I know it's not been that many years ago, but vintage Carmine Corp kind of play style of just kind of very solid, just really winning in most lanes, if not all lanes, and just kind of being almost suffocating opponents with how good they can be. So I'm curious to see how far they can go. I want to see some, the one thing I just don't want to see, and this is what I forgot. Here's my winner. It's going to be Natives because Irish org, and that's just how it is. So NLC all the way. But honestly, like looking at kind of, the one thing I just really hope that we don't get is region versus region in the quarterfinals. That's all I don't want. I want to get I want to get them, no same region quarterfinals and constantly have new matchups all the way up to the final. That's the essence of what makes this tournament so much fun.
Yeah, it always does feel bad when you get the Civil War coming into like quarterfinals and you get two teams knocked out that like you're kind of hoping for that you get to see properly. But finally, we are going to be going into Champ Select, so we can put the button away. Someone finally decided to hit us to start the game.
I'm glad you texted Cadril to let us know, to let them know we were on. So, but yeah, I mean, look, coming into the first game, this is kind of, again, we talked about how condensed the schedule is. You have to kind of come out here swinging here, and I feel like getting rid of these very high playmakers, something like the Poppy, even the Maokai as well, just being able to control those spaces, very high priority.
Yeah, and I think again, like Ivern going to be super strong, Zaya very strong. We've seen things like in the LEC where Callista has now come out as an answer towards things like the Kaisa, so maybe we see one of these teams willing to bring that out. I know Bao has played in the past as well, so curious to see if that is going to be the game plan or where that focus is going to be. Obviously Rumble now gone as well, another very strong top laner.
Yeah, very strong. We'll see how everyone kind of goes right now. It does look like Istanbul Wildcats kind of maybe leaning towards more of those kind of 80 carry picks to make sure Bao and Paris have a much easier time of it than they maybe should. We'll see, kind of taking their time with that last ban to make sure that they have all options covered. But I mean, look, looking towards kind of the big things as well, when you have so much focus in towards that bot lane, it does open up things into that top lane. And actually, yeah, they're going to go and say, look, we're not letting either of the trees. It's a complete deforestation here for the Wildcats to make sure they do not let any of these out of the ban phase.
Yeah, the other big one now is still kind of looking at like Talia. Did get very big buffs in this patch. And Tristana, the other kind of big mid laner that we see an awful lot of the times. Now, with those like AP trees out of the way, maybe you don't want to go towards an AD mid laner, but she's just so incredibly strong at the moment. But that is going to be the Kaisa ban, so we'll have to see, is Tristana going to be the pick, or are we going to turn our attention elsewhere?
Let's see what they want to go for right now. So first pick coming in. They're going to go straight towards maybe that Tristana, like you mentioned. And again, it's a bit of a flex. We have seen it go towards more so the mid lane in the kind of, European regional leagues. But it does tend to be the Rel as well. Just exceptional power. And again, still a flex. Can go jungle, can go support.
Yeah, well, oftentimes when you see this Rel come through, teams will immediately just take the Alistair, right? You kind of nullify that engage for the Rel on the bot side, even when it comes to a lot of these team fights as well, so that is an option. Sejuani did get pretty heavily hit in a lot of the patches. I know we saw it a little bit in LCS, but I think the options for things like the Talia, the Viego, if you're comfortable here for Severo, are going to be great, but not going to be the case. I mean, Severo has more often tended towards the some of the carries, so like the Viego is his most played, so I wasn't sure if we get that, but not going to be the case here.
No, not going to be the case. This Sejuani gets picked up here, so it's good engaged, but it has been hit a little bit, and they're going to be the ones now for Orbit and Anonymo taking themselves to Tristana. Again, still a bit of a flex, but would be most likely seeing that into the mid lane to kind of give you that freedom to control that middle part of the map.
Yeah, I think that's the big one, is just getting that control, and then also double AD tends to be incredibly strong. There's also open up options if you want to go for some sort of AP bot laner like we've seen in the LPL, like a Ziggs or that kind of stuff. Even a Varus can still come through here if you want to take it, but gonna have the Jace taken on the opposite side here. This is still a flex. I mean, Destroy has played in the past and could put in the top lane. More than likely going to Kofta though, as that has been his much more staple in the mid lane. It looks like we're going to get the Zeri coming through on that bottom side as well.
And unfortunately for a lot of people, the Zeri has been sneaking herself back up into the priorities now for ADCs. Again, it just feels like the way games are going, you are going towards those late game teamfights where ADCs are getting 3 items. And yes, her early game is nowhere near what it used to be. She's still a late game AD carry. She still will put out huge amount of damage, especially when she starts to get some level ups in that dash over the walls, so she's able to kind of move more freely. And there's going to be the Nautilus picked up here. Nice bit of point and click CC available here for Orbit Anonymo as they look to try and now continue on with their kind of honestly fairly team fight heavy draft they've got so far.
Yeah, I'm curious now with seeing the Nautilus come through if that is actually Tristana bot lane, because a lot of the times when I think of something like a Sejuani, it's like, hey, love to have like melee mid, maybe melee top lane, so you can play for a lot of these skirmishes on the top side and play off the fact that Sejuani has that passive. You're not really going to see it coming through here with the Tristana. The Sejuani Tristana has some good follow-up, but there is always the opportunity to try and send it into that bot lane and just play hyper-aggressive with the Nautilus onto the Zeri, with Tristana being able to follow. But we'll have to see exactly what the game plan is. On the opposite side, though, looks like we're going to be trying to focus Prime here. Jack's taken off the board. Camille also looking incredibly strong in that top lane at the moment, and Prime has his second, well, tied for most played at the moment in that top lane is the Jax and the Camille, so definitely could be looking to take that one away from Prime as well here.
Yeah, just kind of cover your options to make sure, again, the Destroy kind of has a decent matchup as well. Fiora gets taken away, so again, they're kind of recognizing that Prime has a huge amount of carry potential if given the tools available to him. And even when you look at the kind of side, you know, the Tristana and the Nautilus, Tristana very safe on her own if you can buffer any kind of major CC, so would have made sense to kind of go for maybe a little bit more of a carry top, but we shall see where Orbit and Anonymo want to go. The cat will not be locked in because they already have the Nautilus, unless it's the Nautilus jungle Sejuani top and we go into some all sorts of craziness. I highly doubt that's where we're going to be going, but they're going to go with the Seraphine. Okay, so still technically a flex right until the end. You can't put that mid, you can't put that bot side. It all depends on all the different things.
I'm not going to lie, there's a huge amount of flex that come through. You've even like seen Sejuani top at times, Nautilus into the jungle. Like there's still a huge amount that you could try and work with here. I imagine though it is going to be a Seraphine in towards the mid lane just to try and see. We've seen it 3 times already from Ryzen across the split as well, so more than likely going in there. So I think that's where you're going to see like heavy priority here to try and play towards a lot of these team fights, trying to see if you can get some push in mid and then lean into that bottom side of the map. But at the moment, I think Istanbul Wildcats, they've got a decent amount of team fighting. They've got good AP damage now coming through from both the Gwen and the Zeri to a certain extent as well. And now adding in with the Nocturne as well. This is definitely a team that very quickly wants to try and get aggressive and find picks in these around the Dragon area before things start off.
Yeah, look, you know, having that Rel, massive flex there available to him. You mentioned the Camille, that's going to be coming locked in here for Prime. So wait to see where everything kind of settles itself over the DenizBank Wildcats. We will see them kind of go for a very standard kind of setup and just have that Gwen with a Jace in the solo lanes and of course Nocturne into the jungle, the Rel going straight down at the bot lane. But looks like it is going to be that Tristana, like you mentioned, going into the AD carry role. Seraphine, a much more utility-based kind of engaged mid laner now here for them in the mid lane. So again, lots of kind of different angles for both of these sides to make advantages happen.
Yeah, when I look towards Orbit, it feels like a huge amount of it is a case of, can we try and set up these big CC damages with the 4 stack that we have on the bottom side of the map? Or can we try and get Prime into a position where he actually has a good lead for himself? He can play for team fights, but more importantly, he can play for side lanes as well, because Camille eventually will start to outscale the Gwen, but it does take a good bit of time to come online where you've just got this massive one-shot potential. On the opposite side, though, you're still looking to see, hey, can we, one, try and use the position that we have with things like a Jace and the Nocturne to get control of mid and lean that into the jungle and try and see if you can put some pressure down there. Also, just the fact that you're going to have a lot of high burst potential coming through from that mid jungle. It feels like that's where a lot of the damage potential is going to be coming out for DenizBank Istanbul Wildcats.
Yeah, and it does feel like as well that if Orbit and Anonymo can just kind of survive the paranoia, you know, the jumping in, of course, with the Gwen and all stuff like that, the needlework, if they can get past that first initial startup, they're in a fantastic position. The kiting available to them with something like a Seraphine and a Nautilus is nothing to be sneezed at. So definitely going to have to see, you know, the Wildcats look to try and 100% commit if they're going to go for anything you feel like in these later games, team fights. But we are onto the Rift for the first game of Group A here at the EMEA Masters Group Stage 2023 Summer. And we'll see how either of these teams go. Of course, reigning champions DenizBank Wildcats looking to try and maintain their title and go for a 2-peat, just like Karmine Corp did a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely are the champions, and they're definitely the team that everyone is looking at being the champions, but I think there's still a lot of wiggle room to try and work against this team. It is just going to be a case of trying to survive in the early stages, making sure that you're not giving over the massive gold leads that we talked about for like Bao and Paris on that bottom side, trying to withstand Ferret, who wants to try and play aggressive towards his lanes as well. And that is going to be the big test here for Orbit coming into this.
Great to see. Looks like both junglers happy to start on the bot side and move their way up, mirrored on either end. So going to see both bot lanes actually going for an immediate start, as both junglers happy to kind of take away their own camps. And that's when we kind of wait to see where both these teams want to try and make their first moves. I will say that we have a Camille and a Sejuani. I would love to see that combination come into fruition on the top side, especially considering Destroyer does not have a flash or a ghost to try and help him out.
See, Chipsy here getting some good damage onto Paris on that bottom side. Good hook, and I actually wasn't sure how aggressive Paris wanted to try and go to turn that around, but Gypsy opting into the aftershock means that he's on both sides, honestly, actually, with Paris as well, means that he ends up just super tanky, so not able to trade that back as effectively. And it's kind of been a bit interesting to see how supports have swapped over since the nerfs to the Glacial Augment, where it's actually, okay, can I just take aftershock here and we can just try and bully them out with sheer brute force and tankiness rather than trying to get the damage reduction that was coming through on Glacial Augment.
It definitely shows a little bit more aggression, as you say, rather than mitigation. We do see Seraphine now making her way up towards this top side, just to cover for any kind of Nocturne shenanigans. We'll try and jump down some damage here onto Kofta, who might think he can go for a little bit more, but needs to be very careful. They don't know where this Sejuani is. Yeah, definitely feeling like a little bit more confident, but without the full information. Does he get seen? No, he does not. So this is a good little move, and this is the combination I wanted to see.
Yeah, this is the thing, though. They should know that Severo's on this top side because that red is still up, and Destroy hasn't managed to crash this wave.
Oh, he hasn't gone for it yet. They're going to try and fully commit onto him now. They're going to get the knockback after the snip and skip and snip, and easy as you like. That is going to be first blood to the Camille.
I mean, great job from Orbit here. You look and go, right, realistically, Ignite onto Destroy. He's not going to be able to try and escape this as long as Severo gets up here. You get one auto attack, you're going to be able to finish off the stun. So Destroy just not getting that wave crash early enough and not having Ferret there to help him, but end up giving over first blood.
Didn't even have to invest Ignite or Flash from Severo, so definitely not an ideal situation to find yourself in. Fully engaging here on the bot side, but they're going to try and jump now back on the Paris, who has to flash away. He's just not got the movement to keep him going, and now Nuramin might think about going a little bit more aggressive. They know that Bao has the dash and the flash, and a cleanse available to him. They just want to try and soak him off the wave. Ooh, that almost lollipop back into his face, but Bao has to flash away. So Orbit and Anonymo getting themselves the huge advantage on both sides of the map.
Great job. I mean, we talked about how dominant Bao and Paris have been domestically. Now to step up into the EMEA Masters, Nerman and Gypsy are doing a wonderful job of putting that back onto Bao and Paris. You get the flash, you get a kill, and it's just a case of realizing, hey, look, Tristana at these early stages does so much work when she's able to get that bomb off, and Nerman plays it really well around his jump.
I mean, that's a great utilization of the champion. And have a look at the replay here. I think it's going to be just kind of, again, just recognizing, look, we're level 3 and we are just much stronger.
Yeah, Paris thought he could go aggressive here because he had the bone plating that was up as well, but as soon as that disappears, you get so much damage coming through from the increased attack speed, the bomb damage, and then that leap being reset as well, giving the opportunity then for Nerman to take him down. Also the fact you're playing basically down an aggressive summoner spell with the cleanse versus the heal that Nerman had.
Yeah, and again, having that lethal tempo, you can see it just kind of slowly but surely building up that damage. Very, very nicely done here by the Ultra Liga #1. We'll wait to see now kind of how they're able to kind of transition that. Because the thing is, it's like, yes, the kills are fantastic. Nobody's going to deny that whatsoever. However, it's what you do with those kills, with those pressures, or with those summoners down, that is going to be the key. And it looks like Orbit and Anonymo are maybe thinking about a movement here down towards this bot side again. While that's happening, though, you do have Ferret moving sneakily towards the top side. He doesn't have ultimate, but Prime doesn't have flash. They're going to try and fully commit to this one here. Ignite did go down already from Destroy. Now Ferret recognizes that he's there. They're going to land the Dustbringer down. Does he try and fully commit to it? That is the question, and he's going to go down. Confirmed over by the Nocturne, but a little bit of a Siskel to Destroy as well.
Yeah, again, this is the downside when you're playing with these Ignite top laners. You just don't have the mobility to try and escape, and no real vision there in behind him. So nice job by Ferret to just sneak past, knowing that he wasn't spotted on the way in. I might just pick it up. Severo, though, will respond here, realizing that the enemy junglers on top side will start to take this dragon, even as the push on bot and mid to go for this.
They know that the jungler is top, so they can take this advantage for themselves, no bother whatsoever. You talked about the emphasis of the dragons between these two teams, and it looks like Orbit and Anonymo very much kind of putting a priority onto that. And despite the early gank on topside, Destroy will have that assist and will have himself a little bit of a CS lead, almost 50% up on his opponent, so doing fairly well. It's all a little bit cagey for the moment. Everyone kind of feeling each other out, making sure they know exactly what's happening there. There's going to be a full commitment here into the mid lane. They're going to try and take down Kofta, who will get the knockback. Flashes away, but is Severo just about in range? No, he's not! Cannot get the stun down. Flash for flash, though, from a jungler to a mid laner is always worth for the jungler.
Yeah, especially when Severo's going to be hitting the level 6 now soon. He'll be able to repeat into that lane when Roizen's ultimate comes back up as well. So Kofta playing this lane way too aggressive. Should have known that the jungler more than likely going to be coming back that way, but tried to get the poke down and paid for it.
And again, just kind of small little moments here. They're kind of seeing now how the TCL champs can do. The Wildcats looking to try and, again, be favorites, but Orbit and Anonymo not letting them just kind of run away with this, making sure they say, hey, look, if you're going to win this, you're going to have to play pretty damn well to get this one out for us. Level 6 now here for Severo means that he's going to have access to that Glacial Prison and maybe a repeat gank into that mid lane.
Yeah, I think this is more so for Severo on this top side, just trying to make sure Prime can crash this wave successfully because it's so big at the moment. Although, as I say that,
I mean, they can just fully commit onto this one here. They've got the stuns to come down. They've got the damage to confirm it. And that is now a 2-kill Camille at 7 minutes or just over it. And this is starting to become a little bit volatile on the top side. You said it took a while for the Camille to outscale, but in a 2v1, she's always going to win.
Yeah, I mean, 2 kills now for the Camille and this massive wave loss for Destroy. Now, you can see Prime does have the level advantage, but even with that 600 gold as well going over to Prime, this is now a major issue for the DenizBank Wildcats. And the problem is you're playing with a Nocturne who just doesn't have access to level 6. He's trying desperately to get to that stage, but on the bottom side, and taking that step forward as Destroy means you're just going to be in a prime spot, no pun intended, to like set up there for Severo to come through.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just kind of a done and dusted deal there. And this is the thing, we saw that both these top laners went for the Ignite. They went for the aggressive summoner, but not having that extra, even the Ghost, to be perfectly honest, does leave you so exposed, especially with something like a Sejuani just lying in wait most of the time, as we see level 6 is now for the bot lane of Orbit and Anonymo. And now they can start to kind of really put down this pressure here. And Bao and Paris have been a little bit quiet. They haven't had as much of a free time as they maybe hoped they would have had.
Yeah, I mean, they are still kind of keeping within touching distance, though. Like, when you think of the fact that you had the early kill go over and that plate's now gone over, there's still the CS lead for Bao. So they're still trying to see if they can play that aggressive style and push Nerman and Chipsy back, which has kind of been the big way that Bao and Paris have found their leads, is through that isolated 2v2. But with that early kill going across, it's definitely hurting their pockets a little bit. Second dragon, the dragon going across to Orbit as well means that there just isn't as many opportunities for Istanbul Wildcats to try and play around that bottom side. We'll have to see, though, in 2 minutes' time, if maybe now with Ferret having the ultimate available, Kofta should have flashback up, if they can try and play around that bottom side a little bit more and play to the strengths of Bao and Paris.
You got some hard lockdown here from the Nautilus if you want to try and make this one work, but I feel like Kofta is recognizing, yeah, look, I don't have full priority. I don't need to go aggressive here if I don't need to. And therefore, he's just going to let that wave just kind of go down. Doing a fairly decent job to kind of make sure he's not super punished for not having that flash, which only has a couple of seconds or minute or so left on it for cooldown. As you come up to about 10 minutes, it's been a fairly action-packed early game. It is only about a couple of 100 gold in favor of Orbit Anonymo. As like I said, nothing to be too worried about here for the Wildcats, but we'll see what they can kind of do as the next string of objectives start to spawn with that next dragon in a minute 20.
Yeah, it still feels though like we're going to be focused on this top lane for a little bit. You can see Severo moving up here once again. I think he's probably just going to hover on this top side to make sure that, again, Prime can get this wave crash. You can see there where it's in a bit of an awkward spot. And if you're trying to look towards Dragon in a minute's time, Destroy having that TP up, if he slow builds this wave, there's always a chance, now that we're post 10 minutes, for Destroy to TP down and you lose a massive wave. So I kind of think they need Severo on this top side at the moment to just make sure Prime can set this up. But it may not be the case. Maybe they just try and immediately go towards this Dragon, which I'm now looking at Ferret, moving up to this top side. Maybe they are thinking here for Istanbul Wildcats, we give Dragon and maybe look for a play on this top side instead.
Quite possibly. We'll say it won't be a Chem Dragon, as that is the second dragon here, so it could be a fairly decent one. Could be a Mountain or an Infernal Soul. Either could be fantastic for either of these teams, but looks like this time around Ferret just happy to let that Rift Herald go down into the mid lane, cover that one there, get a little bit of extra gold over to his mid laner as best he possibly can. And that's going to be a pretty easy one. Only the one plate though, which is a little bit unfortunate. You really do want to be getting a minimum of 2 when you get that the Rift Herald on the plates.
Yeah, I kind of like as well when you hang on the push in mid lane with that Rift Herald for exactly when Dragon spawned, because it forces a bit of an awkward call then from your opponents to say like, hey, are you going to defend Dragon or are you going to defend your mid turret? And when it's only the second Dragon, you're not overly worried about it. I think it was just the fact that Destroy had actually set up his lane properly in that top side that they kind of felt a bit rushed to play around, hey, the big wave has crashed on top, we now need to make a play on bottom side. You can even see here, Istanbul Wildcats though, still getting control of a river, and Chipsy goes in.
They're going to go in because they've got the TP coming in as well. So that's going to be Royson joining in on top of this one here. Paris trying to jump away, does pop down the Magnet Storm. They're going to try and get away from the Tristana, but the Tristana has to sacrifice her life for the kill on the support. Bao just kind of free hitting right now, and the double TP from the top lane is coming in on the backside of this one here. The Nautilus trying to see if he can run away. He flashes away, but Kopt is on his ass, and he's going to be running into his death as he goes down. Now they can turn the fight to the rest of Orbit Anonymo as Bao just keeps putting in the damage. He's not quite the late game Zeri, but he is still putting in work, and the Wildcats roar into life.
You're seeing the downside of the composition that Orbit takes. If you don't have Tristana in these fights, that's a lot of damage, but Prime wants to take up for it.
He wants to make up for it. They will be able to get 1 kill off. It's about does go down. I don't know if they're going to be able to contest this Dragon. It isn't going down fairly quickly, so they might actually just go for this fight again. It might not be over.
Now they want to try and set this up again. Paris, though, on the back line. Can he try and get in onto Orbit here? They spot that they're on
They
it.
give it up.
Yeah, they're just going to walk away.
They're just going to walk away from this one here, not really going to go for it. In fact, Orbit Anonymo recognizing that everyone's just kind of walking away, but now Prime goes in on the backside of this one here. They get the stun down, but Paris very, very low. Nuraman trying to get him called off again, but at the end of it all, yes, it's a good fight for the Wildcats, but they lose the Dragon.
I mean, Prime kind of held that together there. I was kind of saying, look, Neriman's gone, so you don't really have the damage. You can see it at the start of this fight, right? Neriman goes, right, I can try and get on towards Paris here, get a kill and jump back over the wall, but Ferret using that ultimate as he goes over means that they're able to pick off the Tristana as she's going over. It doesn't even pop the heal. And then you're looking again going, well, Roizen doesn't have damage. You're now with a Nautilus and a Sejuani, so that's out of the picture. So they try to call Prime down, but you're still in an uneven fight. So that just sets up then for Destroy to come in and get a kill for themselves. And this is where the Wildcats should be able to move over and get this objective for themselves. But Prime making the call here to actually pick off Bao, managing to just about get back in onto him to finish him off. And even the ult from Roizen as well to buy space there for Prime to step back.
I mean, just really well done here by Prime just to recognize how much damage he had available to him. Already has the Divine Sunder, even got himself an Executioner's Call in just to cover for that little bit of healing that Destroy will be putting in. So, I mean, this is a matchup that, like you said, should be winning by the Camille in the late game, but slowly but surely with these 3 kills, he's becoming a bit of a monster.
Yeah, especially if you can start to get the Divine Sunder procs down onto Destroy, it's going to become really difficult. Ferret's already up here just to make sure that Destroy can crash this, because you do not want to be overextended, but you can see Prime there actually managed to freeze the wave just outside, so Destroy needs a little bit more help if he wants to try and get this one pushed in, but with Rift Herald about to spawn in 30 seconds, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. Prime actually setting this wave up, so he should be able to get a bounce back right as the Rift Herald's about to come online.
And the big thing as well is, like, you've got full first items being picked up for pretty much everybody on the side of Orbit. You are nearly there for everyone on Wildcats, but you are waiting for Destroy to finish off that Rift Maker to try and make sure you can get at least a little bit more of a semblance of survivability in these fights. The Rift Herald will be spawning very, very shortly, but can they actually go for it? Do they want to go for it is the kind of real question. They did have to use a hell of a... Yeah, I was going to say, they have to use a lot of summoners as well, so it's not really something they can 100% force. They're going to force in the mid lane, though. There's going to be the ultimate coming down. He charms on the Kofta, but Kofta doesn't matter because he wasn't tanking.
Yeah, I think a good read from Ferret here, because you can look at bot lane and see exactly where Severo wants to try and go here, looking towards Bao and Paris. But I don't know if he can get in here.
It's going to be difficult. Again, Paris and Bao just being very respectful about who and where they're going now. They're not really letting Anonymo just kind of take over like kills alongside you know, the tower takes or anything like that, and it just ends up being a tower for tower, but the extra kill going over the side of the Wildcats, and they have priority on this Rift Herald.
Yeah, and that's basically what Ferret read there, was like, okay, so there's more than likely not going to be a play on towards the Rift Herald because we haven't spotted anyone on this top side of the map, and there's the big wave crash that's going to come in. So instead of just going immediately for the Rift Herald off spawn, he actually goes, right, I can make the dive in mid lane happen. We can defend, well, not defend, but we can back off of that potential terror dive on bot lane and still get a reset in to come back out and get this Rift Herald. So nicely done by the Wildcats to kind of read what Orbit's plan was and now get themselves another Rift Herald.
It's 2 dragons for Anonymo, 2 Rift Heralds for the Wildcats. So again, just kind of figuring out where their priority ends up being, and Summoners coming back up. They should be looking for a fight now at this next dragon in a minute 30. It's a Mountain Soul, very, very powerful, especially for something like a Camille. Just being able to have that extra survivability in those side lanes can be absolutely massive. So we'll see if either of these teams want to try and really put all their eggs in that one basket.
Yeah, I think when you're looking towards Wildcats, I think when you've got like the super strong mid jungle that we were talking about with 2 kills now apiece, there's an opportunity to just like shove in mid lane super aggressively, like with your duo, and just start to lean in towards this bottom side, especially with Ferret having that ultimate backup and available again. It's going to be really hard for them to try and defend onto this bottom quadrant of the map. So you can see instead, actually just going to see if Bao can shove that in. But I think having Ferret lean down to support Kofta on taking bot lane tower and that kind of stuff is going to be super important. For Destroy, you're still going to be in a decent spot when it comes to team fights later on in the game, but at the moment I think just letting the Gwen pick up whatever farm she can and like playing off of this chase is going to be a much stronger position for the Wildcats.
Some decent wards here for the side of the Wildcats. You can see that kind of line across the enemy territory there from mid all the way to blue. Thank you so much, observers. But now they're going to find one of them. Maybe find another one as well. So they're kind of covering off as much as they possibly can, dotting their I's and crossing their T's before this next potential dragon fight. There's going to be a trade-off of turrets, you would imagine, for the moment. Bot lane being taken by the Wildcats. Paris getting caught in a little bit of no man's land. Not the best hook I've ever seen in the world, but it's going to be tower going down the bot lane for sure, as Shirley gets to do her favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, and you still got position here as well for Ferret. You can see, try to see if you can get vision down just as this dragon spawns. I think with the movement that Orbit have, they should be able to just turn immediately onto someone. They're so good at turning, and Severo has the ultimate.
Yeah, they do know that there's Kofta coming in. The TP comes in from the Camille. I don't think the Wildcats are going to try and contest this one. It doesn't look like they're too separated. They're kind of two different fronts. You want to be combined to kind of work out with that Magnet Storm, but it just doesn't work. And just before 18 minutes, we have ourselves a sole point here for the Ultra League #1 seed.
Yeah, and it's nicely done by Orbit at the moment. So they basically read, hey, look, we can drop bot tower. That's going to probably go across regardless. We don't have anyone who's strong enough to try and deal with the Jason, the potential dive from the Nocturne. So instead, they played for position on the Dragon, which they now pick up. Ryzen, though, in trouble.
Ooh, he's in trouble, but he didn't get hit by that first bit of CC. Did not land the Q on the Paris, which means the Magnet Storm and the Needlework don't do all the work they need to do, and he gets out a little bit scot-free. Will not have his ult here for a potential dive, and it looks like they're going to go exactly into it. I don't know why he stayed to try and keep a tower that was already going to die. Finally, the paranoia goes away. They throw in all the CC here onto Paris because he has nowhere to go, and now a TP coming in. That's Kofta trying to join in on this fight. You have Bao over the wall looking to try and see what he can do as well. Does get the ultimate on to try and get the big AoE cleanses, but a little bit too early, so he can't get anything else off it. Finally, will be able to get himself away from this fight, and they will be able to kill off the rest of Orbit and Anonymo. While this was all happening, he had Prime in the bot side trying to get as much of this tower as he possibly can, but the Wildcats starting to build a lead.
It's just Orbit nearly had everything coming together in that play, and they just fumbled it at the last second. Roizen not TPing onto the top lane turret meant that he was just left high and dry when he tried to come up and defend that tower. That just started that snowball effect, and suddenly what had started as a good call for Orbit around that dragon now leads the Wildcats with a massive 3,500 gold lead. We'll see it as we come into this one. So Roizen, I think, needed to TP to the tower initially, so he could just clear that wave very, very quickly, not have to deal with it. They think they can then outnumber Wildcats on the top side is Orbit, but they don't realize they don't have that TP available for the Camille, whereas you still have that TP available for the Jace. So he actually comes up onto this top side. Bao, as the Zeri, very good at getting into these fights when she needs to be, just because of the position that she has, and then it's Wildcats were able to clean up the back of the fight.
Yeah, and Kofta's chasing over onto Nurum and making sure he can't just get away with kind of getting off the bombs and running away. They will say they trade back the towers, so it's not the worst thing in the world here. But as you mentioned, it is a 3,500 gold lead now here for the Wildcats. And honestly, it was probably even bigger in that last fight because a lot of your gold lead is in that top lane. In fact, all of your gold lead was in that top lane.
I mean, the funny thing to me is like just how much gold Kofta has. Like, just look at that big fat 3.2k that is there available for this Jace. Like, this is now your win condition, and you can see that Paris and Ferret are very much aware of this. It's like, right, as long as we group up this 2.5 item Jace, like nobody can really deal with them. The only person who really is a big threat is Neriman, who's also completed 2 items, but even then. Ooh, can they try and do something here?
They're going to try. They've got the paranoia to try and maybe make something work, but Ferret can't get the kill afterwards. Paris flashes away. There's the Hextech ultimatum. I don't think the Prime can really make this one work for his team, and they're going to lose 2 more kills. They committed to it without the Nautilus or the Seraphine, and they get punished so hard. The Wildcats going to turn and burn for Baron.
This is just, again, Orbit biting off more than they can chew. Wildcats immediately collapse onto the play, and now with Baron there, I mean, there's no way this is going to be a steal. Like Chipsy and Roizen trying to get in position.
They're trying to get in position. Ferret uses the spell shield right there. Destroy taken very low. The Baron taken. Secured here by the side of Wildcats. They will only get 4 of them out. Bao goes over the wall and gets 1 kill. Can he get another yet? No! He gets deleted before he can. Nuruman will get a second reset, and he should be able to get himself away from this. Kofta looking to try and snipe him out, but cannot get it done just before he goes down. That's going to be an easy kill there. So ends up being a 5 for 2. Baron over to the Wildcats, and this game is turning on its head.
Yeah, and now you've got Dragon that's up in a minute's time as well. This was kind of the big thing that we were looking at for the Ultraliga fans. Try and get that mountain, so maybe you can try and play off of that. But now with Baron available for the Wildcats, they're going to be able to continue to push this one in. They can play through their bot side with Kofta. They can continue to have Destroy, just catch these waves on the top half, and then play for this Dragon in just a minute's time. So now that big win con that Ultraliga were trying for just isn't there anymore.
No, it really isn't. Again, like you're looking at this, like look where the Nautilus and Seraphine are. They're nowhere near this.
Yeah, and again, it's these TP timers that just aren't being picked up by Orbit. Get Destroy into this mix, he's there immediately. Bao again, very quick on from mid lane into that top side of the map. And it's happening every time where, look at the big waves that's dying in mid lane. It's Wildcats get control and priority in the mid lane and then are able to lean into these plays. And is that kind of one step that Orbit are missing that Wildcats are very aware of.
And look, even though they were so low on health bars, you can see that the Wildcats just kind of back away people who didn't need to be in the Baron pick, keep them away to the side. They'd stay full idea of where Paris is. They will kill him off, but I mean, he's done his job at this point. He's kept everyone away from the Baron.
Yeah, I will say definitely over aggressive as Bao. Tristan has a lot of damage in the stage. We kind of said, hey, Neriman's the one threat, and Bao was like, let me double check that statement.
Yeah.
And found out real quick. But with Ferret and Kofta there to finish that off, now, as we said, Ferret going to be able to get onto this Dragon. You've got the 2-item Camille that's trying desperately to now be that split push win con, but when you've got the 2 items complete on towards the Gwen as well, she can honestly just ult these waves and keep Prime away from that as far as it comes. So now you're hoping as Orbit that maybe you can catch Wildcats if they make a mistake, that they overextend, but there hasn't really been those options ever since really the early stages of the laning phase.
I mean, Dagda, there's only 5k between the Jace and the Seraphine. That is unheard of. It's nearly 2 items in the difference right now. They just finished off the Seraph's Embrace there for Roizen, so this is just a difficult position to find yourself in. And yes, the Camille was doing great, and the Tristana will do damage, but you're not really in that kind of same early game position that you thought you were, and they are going to be able to kind of keep putting poke out. This is the thing, when you have a Jace on your team, you're going to have so much priority to be able to kind of check brushes, check sides, without really committing to anything.
Yeah, and especially, actually, Prime going in, Bell hops over the wall.
Not quite able to make anything happen from it there. I think that was very much a you know, kind of a hopeful throw in of the hook shot, wall shot to see if he can do it for it. But on the top side, the Gwen's pushing in, and they're seeing if they can maybe go on top of the Nautilus, who doesn't really have the support. He's going to get bursted down so easily. There's the paranoia as well, just to make sure there's absolutely no way in hell you're going to be able to get that Nautilus out alive. And I mean, this is just the Wildcats just kind of pushing them back. Nuraman, he tried to be aggressive, but immediately gets caught out of it. Now they're going to try and jump on the Destroy. They're trying to see if they can find some odd numbers fights. The Magnastorm comes down, forces a flash out of the Sejuani, and look at that needlework doing work. They go back in, they're going to be able to take out the Sejuani. Now they need to be able to take out Bao. They do trade it back 1 for 1, but he's just left all alone on himself. And that means they're going to be able to kill him off as easy as that. Look at the damage coming out here from this Jace. It's just impossible to deal with.
Yeah, Kafta immediately walks in, says, "How are you doing, lads?" And immediately Orbit have to run for the hills. This is just complete domination by Wildcats come this mid-game. They've been out playing the map. They've been able to set up really well for these team fights. And every time Orbit think they're in a position to fight, they're just gone like, Chipsy here, like they're on a ward, and Chipsy's just like, I think I can go forward here. But instead, Wildcats immediately pounce again. EMEA with everyone caught in the base, 4 versus 5. It's desperation mode for Orbit. And Neraman, I appreciate this because it's like, hey, I need to try and make something happen here to try, or else I just lose my entire base. But as he goes in, the top side for Orbit go in as well. And now you kind of end up in that same position where you just don't have a damage dealer for this. Prime tries to step up to be that, just as Neraman comes through, but you're slowly but falling backwards here as Orbit.
I mean, like, as you said, like, Nuraman's kind of in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. He doesn't really have a choice in terms of how the engage is kind of come out of this. So, again, just kind of more and more priority given over to the side of the Wildcats. Now an 8,000 gold lead. They've got the Dragon stop stacking. It's up again in 2.5 minutes. It's a big win condition here for Anonymo, but, I mean, can they get it? That is the bigger question, because I don't think they can leave their base.
I think even with the Mountain Soul now, it's just too far gone. Like 10,000 gold nearly coming up here, and you've already got a lot of the items that would help, like Sharilda's Grudge and that coming through here that can get through some of this armor pen and that. It just feels like it's kind of doom and gloom now, to be honest, for Orbit. You're looking for a miracle play with like Prime and Neraman maybe one-shotting Kofta, then being able to pick up Bao on the side, but even Destroy is no real pushover at this stage.
They're going to try and jump on the Ferret, but a Magnet Storm onto 3, and there's just nothing else they can do. They're deleting Kofta just hopping around the map trying to catch everybody out, and there's just not a lot going on here for the side of Orbit and Anonymo. They will finally get down the Rel, but I mean, it's just all for naught. They're trying their best to defend their base, but what started so brightly ends in absolute disaster. The Wildcats, they took a while, but they are finally into 5th gear.
And they're just ready to end this right here, right now. Royce and Neraman are trying to dam this, but the TP comes in onto the creep to keep it alive.
Keeps it alive just about. They are taking a fair bit of damage on the backside of this one. Again, Nuraman is 2.5 items. He is still a Tristana that will do work. But again, it's just kind of more and more hurt being put down here onto the Ultra League at #1 seed.
Yeah, and I think this is where, again, you kind of start to see the difference between some of the top regions and teams that we see coming into this. And unfortunately for the Ultra League, it just isn't the case where they're able to play to the same standard of macro. They're not really able to play to the same calls and standards that are being brought here by Wildcats. And now the Desperation Bard is going to come through. This is could it potentially work? I mean, you need Severo here, but nah, Wildcats are here.
I mean, they're here, but can they get themselves the Baron? That's the question. 3,000, 2,000. Paranoia comes in. Not quite sure who got it. Looked like it went over to the side of the Istanbul Wildcats. Now they're going to try and get this fight as well. They get the fear off. They get everybody else out. Baron and 2 kills going over to the side of the Wildcats. And then you can imagine that with the base open, they're going to look to try and end. Yeah,
Roy's in TP back to the base, so he'll manage to at least keep himself alive. But this is it. 3 people left standing ahead of the onslaught that is the Wildcats, and they don't want to stop this with Baron.
No, they really, really don't. And now you can see Nuraman. I mean, what's a man to do? They finally get, oh, there's everything that happened in the game. There's everything that went down and right at the end of it all. But, I mean, look, it's a formality at this point for the side of the Wildcats. They will start as they meant to go on, and they will start off their EMEA Masters Summer stage with a win. And look to make themselves a pretty big, formidable foe for anyone looking to try and take them down.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't even start off particularly clean coming through for the Wildcats. I mean, we got the kill going across for Neraman and Chipsy in that bottom side of the map that worked out incredibly well for them, and kind of got Neraman onto a little bit of a tear. Even the kill initially going over into the top side towards the Camille as well, but unfortunately it was that like slow, steady pace that Wildcats were like, okay, we're just going to wait for you to make a mistake and we're immediately going to punish.
And that's the thing as well, is I feel like for Orbit and Anonymo, they just kind of kept throwing things at the side of Wildcats, and they really just kind of led themselves to the loss, to be perfectly honest. They were in a great position and got the early dragon. Sure, the gold in the mid lane was a little bit kind of skewy, but you could deal with that with how fed your Camille was. And then one fight without the Camille. Okay, well, now we'll fight again, but with the Camille, but we're missing 2 of our members. And it just felt like it was mistake after mistake that Wildcats just gladly took into their open arms, said, thank you very much, mate. We'll gladly take all these advantages.
Yeah, and I think that's where you can kind of see the problem with taking shortcuts when it comes towards the map. Like when you look at, okay, Bao has pushed in mid lane, therefore we are now going to go in and try and take jungle pressure, right? Whereas when you look across an Orbit, it's a case of, well, we're going to try and catch you as you're going for jungle pressure, but we don't have our AD carry with us because he's now trying to get that wave in the mid lane, so he's late to the party, or Prime is late to the party because of a similar situation. That's why it's so important to try and get your wave states in the right position before you try and make those plays. And I think it was that stumbling step that caused the issues for Orbit.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't have a lot of... obviously, it's bittersweet for the side of Orbit and Anonymo, because it's very much the kind of like, they could have won this game. I feel like if they had just kind of played towards their strengths and kept it a little bit more kind of, as you say, cleaner, not so much taking the shortcuts, there was definitely opportunities for them to come back in. And I really am impressed with how their bot lane went, and just the understanding of when they could and could not go for this. Because again, this is level 3s versus level 2s almost kind of coming in here for the Nautilus, and that was the big difference there. They just recognized they could go for it. Yeah,
and a very strong bot lane with the Tristana as well. She's so aggressive and wants to play aggressive in that bottom lane to get those kills. Top side here as well, like we saw these early kills going their way, but this is where we started to then see in the mid game the mistakes coming through. Like just not saying, like, okay, Ryzen TP to that top lane to try and keep that alive. Yes, you've got some people there, but you clear out the way before that really happens. It's the them walking through like dangerous areas, or not having your mid priority try and come for this, or not keeping track of TP timers. These were just things that Wildcats were doing better and gave them better positioning then on the map when it came to these fights.
Yeah, they did their homework. That's just how it is. Yeah. When you do your homework, you know what was fail to prepare to fail. That's actually, I
agree 100% as well, because even when we looked at like FLICKR making that call on, hey, I'm going to leave first Rift Tower because I'm going to dive mid lane instead first. And like one of the big stats that stood out to me when we came into this was Orbit only has 28, well, nearly 29% of heralds in their games. That's a ridiculously low figure for someone that won the region, right? They don't care about the Rift Tower, they want to play for Dragons. And I think when you see the way Istanbul Wildcats were playing this, it was, hey, we want to try and like basically take that stat and go, right, well, let's check it. You don't try and come for the early Rift Tower, you try and go for a dive on bot lane instead. Right, well, we're going to leave ourselves open in the bottom side, but escape away, and instead go for that dive and get Rift Tower and get Tower. And it's like constantly trading up. And I think it's why it's so good to see the Wildcats when they are playing on form like this in the mid game, because they do make really smart decisions like that. That is why they are the defending champions.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's why you can't just have a good early game. You can't just have one good team fight. It has to be a multitude of different things that you bring together to just take these guys down. It's just what you have to do. You have to have a good early, a decent plan for the mid, and a way to finish off the game as well. And unfortunately for Orbit and Anonymo, it just didn't come together. But for the Wildcats, I mean, look, it shows they can play from a deficit as well. They went down behind early. They said, look, it's fine. Don't worry about it, Gwen. We can still sort this out. And they isolated the Camille away. They said, cool, there's your gold lead, and you are no longer relevant because we're going to fight without you. Just a really smart way to play around the map, and like you said, just kind of punishing shortcuts.
Also, getting as much of a gold lead as they did for Kofta. I mean, the fact that he was able to just be on 2.5 to 3 items before anyone else meant he was just taking pop shots at everyone, and then being able to say, right, now Kofta can play for sides. Because for a lot of that portion of the game where Gwen and Camille were still trying to wrangle with each other as to who had the dominance in a side lane, Kofta was definitely ahead, and you could see then FLICKR just able to lean into Kofta, constantly shadow him, make sure that you're able to then play for the Jace to take side lanes, and it just meant that Royzen was never really a part of the equation, or you could even really play for the big team fight you were looking for at that 4th Dragon coming through for Orbit.
Yeah, it was unfortunate there for Orbit, but good win here for the Wildcats. They are now kind of bringing themselves up and ready for themselves, but we're going to send it to a quick break, and then when we return, we're going to have ourselves our second series of the day.